New York Times is reporting the surprise weapon the Iraqi media has been warning about is a primitive nuclear bomb that kills by radiation rather than a devastating blast. The reports say it could be delivered by aircraft. French sources report tanks, troops and fuel trucks from the multinational force are rolling north through Saudi Arabia towards Kuwait. And UN Secretary-General Perez de Cuellar has made a final plea for peace to Saddam Hussein. He said it would be a tragic disappointment to find the nations of the world engaging in a conflict no one wants. In Iraq, Saddam Hussein has declared a national holiday to mark the end of the United Nations deadline. Preparations for war continue as huge anti-American rallies are held right round the country.
They were organized, they were enthusiastic, and they were everywhere. In Baghdad and in every city in the country, massive demonstrations for Saddam Hussein. There have been many of them since U.S. forces and their allies poured into the region to confront Iraq, but today's were different because when they got going this morning, there were 20 hours left until the deadline. In crowds like these, emotions rise. People get psyched up, they get brave, and they get ready to go against all odds.
We will fight and fight until our rights stand on our land. I live it in Baghdad, and my family stay in Baghdad. They have it everything in Baghdad. Meat, food, milk.
When the crowds faded away, the streets were practically empty. A few cars, a few people. By mid-afternoon, shops were closed. Nobody was going back to work. And by sunset, Baghdad was quiet and calm. Baghdad on the last night before the deadline. A lot quieter than usual. A few last-minute preparations, but no outward fear.
We've just received these pictures of Saddam Hussein inside occupied Kuwait. The Iraqi president appears to be praying on the ground, he claims, as his own. After visiting the troops, the president declared his army ready for war. The mood of the 700,000-strong international force is one of anticipation, keen to get the job over with and go home. It's now a sunny Wednesday afternoon in the Gulf. All the experts agree the American-led force will wait until nightfall before launching any attack. That means the earliest an assault could be made is about 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, our time.
Pictures of a war machine shifting into high gear.
You can really see a change this past week.
On the ground and in the air, troops are moving north toward Kuwait to the battlefield, while new forces still arrive from the States.
No question in my mind at all that we're going to really kick some butt. We're going to do real well.
The point of the spear, the F-15 Eagle, the match of any fighter in the air. These planes will be among the first to challenge the Iraqis. They've trained to return to base only for fast pit stops.
We can probably reload an airplane, fuel him, and get him back in the air quicker than you can change the oil in your car.
Clear the P! Be clear!
On the last day before the deadline, the 82nd Airborne armed their Apache helicopters and scrawled notes on the Hellfire missiles they hope will save American lives.
It's just our little message to Iraq, you know, letting them know that we're ready to do whatever we were called upon to do.
Those untrained in war are preparing too, learning how to survive chemical attacks and stocking supplies for an uncertain future. Only a few have simply packed up and headed for the hills. This morning, as the clock raced toward the brink, eastern Saudi Arabia was quiet. The air was cold and clear. There was no sign of a gathering storm.
For the first time, America is deploying its main nuclear bomber, the B-52, into the Middle East. Tonight, 24 aircraft are on their way to the Gulf, and radio frequencies in Iraq are being jammed, a procedure that usually precedes an aerial attack.
The bombers are now close enough to the war zone to hit Iraqi positions without refueling. Pentagon officials would not identify which country agreed to take the B-52s. Spy satellites have pinpointed as bomber targets virtually every trench, tank, and artillery piece in Kuwait.
Tanks, we estimate the Iraqis have 4,200 tanks. That's up 200 from last Thursday.
Those same satellite photographs produced the Pentagon's weekly assessment of Iraq's strength. Another sign today that war may begin very soon is evidence of U.S. electronic jamming of high radio frequencies in Iraq, the prelude to any air assault. And U.S. intelligence sources say Iraq may decide to use oil as a weapon. Senior administration officials told NBC News that Saddam has 5 fully loaded oil tankers in Kuwait's main port. They expect he'll release tens of millions of gallons of oil from those tankers into the northern Persian Gulf and set it ablaze. For Saddam, that would be temporary protection against marine amphibious landings. Smoke from burning oil would also hamper laser-guided smart bombs, which need clear air to sight targets. More of a problem would be the devastating effect of floating oil on water desalinization plants serving U.S. forces in Saudi Arabia.
Many military analysts are predicting a short, sharp conflict and inevitable victory for the Western multinational forces. But New Zealand military historian and former army tactician Chris Pugsly says the US is underestimating its enemy.
Suddenly it begins. Using night vision equipment, the US-led forces launch a massive campaign to dominate the skies, seeking to preempt opposition from Iraq's Soviet and French-made missiles and aircraft.
I think very quickly they will achieve that air superiority.
Thousands of sorties are flown over the next few days, with cruise missiles launched from ships off the Kuwaiti coast targeting Iraq's command and control facilities. But even as Iraqi air defences are stripped away, resistance remains.
Vietnam showed that air power by itself, even though air forces would like to believe that's the case, aren't enough.
Using naval bombardment and aircraft, roads, bridges, water and fuel depots are then shelled to cut off critical supplies to Iraqi forces dug in on the ground.
An air attack upon ground soldiers, no matter how well trained, no matter how well disciplined, in which they have no way of defending themselves, will be utterly devastating.
But in spite of the air attacks, the Iraqis refuse to give in. A ground assault is launched, the largest ever fought in the desert, with thousands of tanks on both sides.
If the bulk of the Iraqi forces stay in position, then you are looking at a very dirty conventional battle.
Worse follows, however. The Iraqis fire chemical shells, putting many soldiers in the US-led multinational force under real pressure for the first time.
What is the combat effectiveness of the American ground forces? That has yet to be tested.
As the battle grinds on, casualties mount. In the first 10 days, perhaps 50,000 Iraqis. For the multinational force, a lower figure, but still a significant one.
Possibly as high as 10,000, at the most 16,000 for such a 10-day period.
And even if the gung-ho tacticians are right and the battle is over within a matter of weeks, what will be left? Kuwait will be in ruins, Iraq leaderless and in a state of anarchy.
Do we want Iraq to disappear from the map and open up the problems that will cause in the Middle East with Syria, Iran, Turkey and everyone else fighting over the spoils?
So while the war may be winnable in military terms, though even that's not assured, there's little likelihood of a political winner, and after all, that's why wars are fought. Neil Mackay, 3 National News.